The sky was calm that morning as the orphanage children played in the dusty yard behind the shelter. Laughter echoed across the field, bouncing between the empty buildings nearby. The headmistress, a tall blue-skinned woman named Thalia, watched them from the doorway with a gentle smile. No one expected the sky to burn before noon. When the first explosion shook the mountains, dust fell from the rafters. Children froze in place. Then came the scream of ships breaking through the clouds. The peace of the valley was over in seconds. Thalia rushed the children inside. Her voice was firm but calm as she called out names. Her long robe dragged behind her as she moved fast, checking rooms, counting heads. She didn't even stop to glance at the fire outside the windows. The communications array had already gone silent. The planetary defense grid was down. The city to the north had gone dark. No messages, no signals, just silence. Something massive was happening, and the orphanage was caught in the middle of it, far above, in the last civilian patrol ship still flying. Commander Jack Merrill saw the chaos below. Smoke, fire, a giant alien warship pushing through the clouds like a black shadow. His orders were to retreat to orbit and protect the capital zone. But something caught his eye on the scanner. There were life signals on the southern edge of the burning zone. At least 25 of them, mostly juveniles. Civilian frequency. That area had no shelters left standing except one. Jack gritted his teeth and changed course without asking for permission. Inside the orphanage, the ground shook again. The children screamed as the windows shattered. Thalia shielded too small. One's with her own body. She was trembling, but her voice stayed strong. "We're going to be okay," she whispered. "Someone will come." But no one came. Not for hours, and the fires were getting closer. Thalia had started writing the names of the children on the inside of their sleeves, just in case someone found them later. Her hands trembled as she wrote, but she kept going. Then a roar louder than thunder shook the walls. A shuttle pierced through the smoke outside and slammed into the dirt with its ramp already opening. The children gasped. Some screamed. But Thalia stood still, eyes wide as a human man in a black pilot suit ran out, shouting her name. Jack didn't wait for questions. "We have minutes," he yelled, grabbing two kids by the hand. Thalia stared at him, unsure if this was real. He was covered in ash. One arm was bleeding. But he was real, and he was risking everything to save them. She nodded once, then called the children. They moved fast. Jack ran back and forth between the building and his shuttle, carrying the smallest ones himself. Fire was crawling over the nearby hills now, racing toward them with hungry speed. He went in 6 times. On the 7th, a beam crashed down across the hallway. Jack didn't hesitate. He dove under it, rolled through flames, and came out with the last 2 children in his arms. His suit was scorched, but his grip didn't shake. Thalia climbed into the shuttle last, dragging a medkit behind her. Jack slammed the hatch and threw the shuttle into the sky. The engines screamed, and the floor shook under them. They were barely a kilometer high when the orphanage exploded below. Everyone inside the shuttle was silent. Jack didn't say anything. He just flew, focused and calm. Thalia looked at him, unsure who he was or why he came. But she knew one thing. This human had risked his life for children he didn't know. Back at the capital, the orphanage survivors were given shelter inside a military base. Doctors checked them. Psych officers interviewed them. But it was Thalia's idea to rebuild. She went to the governor herself and made one request. She wanted to name the new orphanage after the human who came from the fire, the one who didn't ask for reward, the one who never even gave his full name. Just Jack. The one who flew through flames to save children he'd never met. The medical center was cold and clean, but the children still clung to Thalia's robe. Many of them hadn't spoken since the evacuation. Some cried in their sleep. The fire had taken everything they knew. The only thing they remembered was the man who flew through it to reach them. Jack sat on a bench outside the clinic with a bandage on his arm. He watched the sky, quiet and still. No one had spoken to him much since the rescue. Most soldiers passed by without a glance. A few gave a respectful nod. But no one truly knew what he had done. He didn't care about medals or rank. He only cared that they had made it out. Every one of those kids had been in his shuttle. He had counted them himself before taking off. He still remembered their faces, especially the smallest one with a broken arm who never cried. The governor had summoned Thalia for a meeting. She left the children with a nurse and walked into the administration dome. Her steps echoed across the smooth metal floor. She wore her traditional head wrap, though ash still clung to its edge. Inside, the governor stood with 3 advisors around a hologram. The war was spreading fast. Cities were falling. More evacuations were needed. But Thalia didn't ask for supplies. She didn't ask for weapons. She asked for something else entirely. "I want to rebuild the orphanage," she said clearly. "But not in my name. I want it to be named after the man who saved us. The one who risked his life and didn't ask for anything. The children already speak of him like a legend. I want that legend to grow." The room fell silent. One advisor frowned. Another leaned back, arms crossed. The third simply nodded. The governor looked at her, then turned to the others. "Do we have his full name?" he asked, "or service record?" But Thalia shook her head. "He never gave it," she said. "He only said, 'Call me Jack.' I know it's not protocol. But I believe in honoring what matters. And what matters is that without him, none of us would be standing here today." Outside, Jack was walking the edge of the courtyard when a group of children spotted him. One waved, then another. Soon they ran to him, surrounding him with small arms grabbing his coat. He smiled, unsure how to react, and knelt down to speak to them. "You're safe now," he said. "That's what matters." A few of the older ones nodded. The smallest girl with the broken arm stood beside him and placed her tiny hand on his shoulder. She didn't speak, but her eyes said more than words ever could. One of the base guards approached slowly. He cleared his throat. "Commander Jack, the governor wants to see you." Jack stood, his expression unreadable. He gave a short nod and followed the man back into the dome without asking why. Inside, the governor extended a hand. "Thank you, Commander," he said. "You acted without orders, against protocol. Normally, that would lead to punishment. But in this case, we're making an exception. You've been requested to help oversee the relocation of orphan survivors across 3 sectors." Jack blinked. "I thought I was being grounded." The governor smiled slightly. "You were. Until a certain headmistress made it clear the children need someone who will do more than follow rules. They need someone who shows up when it matters." Thalia stepped into the room then, her presence quiet but firm. She looked at Jack and nodded once. "They trust you," she said. "And they listen to you. I believe they feel safe because of you. Will you stay with us? Help rebuild the place they can call home again?" Jack looked down for a moment, then met her gaze. "Yeah," he said simply. "I'll stay for as long as they need me." The governor nodded again and turned back to his advisors. The conversation moved on, but something unspoken passed between Jack and Thalia. Later that evening, a large metal sign was placed in the reconstruction yard outside the supply dome. Welded into the surface were the words, "Jack Merrill Home for the Lost." It wasn't just a building. It was a promise made in fire and kept in peace. The construction began just 2 days after the nameplate was set in place. Supplies were scarce, but workers came from nearby towns to help. Some brought tools, some brought food. Everyone had heard what the human pilot did. They wanted to be part of something good. Jack didn't sit back and watch. He lifted beams, he dug trenches. He helped lay the foundation beside people who had never seen a human up close. His hands were covered in dust and grease. No one cared that he was an officer. He worked like everyone else. The children watched from a safe area set up near the base camp. They clapped when Jack carried heavy stone blocks. They laughed when he slipped in wet cement. Even the quietest ones started smiling more. To them, Jack wasn't just a hero. He was their protector. Thalia organized everything with quiet strength. She kept the children fed, educated, and safe. She made daily lists and walked between stations with purpose. Every worker respected her. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was steady. She carried calm like a shield. One night, a young worker named Reluk approached Jack. He was nervous but determined. "Why did you come back for them?" he asked. "You could have flown away and saved yourself." Jack looked at the fire pit for a moment before answering. "Because I saw them on the scanner," Jack said. "And when I saw those little life signals, I couldn't ignore them. Orders didn't matter. Only saving them did." Reluk nodded slowly and said nothing else. But the next day, he brought his younger sister to help. The days passed quickly. The new orphanage took shape, brick by brick. Solar panels lined the roof. Water tanks were buried underground. A new play area was built using scrap ship parts and cargo crates. It wasn't perfect, but it was strong. It was safe. Jack was fixing a cracked pipe when Thalia came to him with a data pad. Her eyes looked tired, but proud. "We're getting more children," she said. 3 transports coming in tomorrow. All from burned villages in the west. Some of them lost everything. He wiped his hands and stood up. "We'll make room," he said. "We'll give them a place to sleep. And someone to care for them." Thalia nodded, but her lips trembled slightly. She didn't let tears fall. But Jack could tell she was close. That night, the children sat around the fire and asked Jack to tell a story. He told them about the time he had to land on a jungle moon with no fuel. His voice was soft, filled with strange sound effects and wild hand gestures. The children laughed until they fell asleep. When everyone had gone to bed, Jack stood near the construction zone and stared at the stars. The war hadn't ended. It was still growing, creeping across the galaxy. But this small place they were building felt like something different. It felt like hope. A message came from command the next morning. Jack was offered a new promotion. And a ship of his own. It was everything he once wanted. But as he read the message, a little boy named Kiri ran up and tugged on his jacket. "You're not leaving, right?" he asked. Jack crouched down and smiled. "No, Kiri," he said. "I'm not leaving." He deleted the message from his pad and stood up again. Behind him, Thalia had seen the screen. She said nothing, but her eyes held something between thanks and understanding. Later that day, the first transport arrived. A long line of frightened children stepped off the ship. Many were too quiet to speak. Some clung to each other. A few had burns and broken bones, but as they stepped into the yard, the children already living there ran to them. They hugged the newcomers. They held their hands. They led them toward the new building. No one told them to do it. They simply remembered how it felt to be saved. And now, they were passing that kindness forward without needing permission. Jack watched from a distance. Thalia stood beside him, arms crossed. "This is what healing looks like," she said. "Not just walls and beds, but children helping children. A place where they know they matter. A place that didn't exist before you landed in that fire." The new children slowly began to adjust. At first, they were quiet and scared, hiding behind doors or holding tightly to their blankets. But every day, the older kids helped them laugh, eat, and play again. The orphanage was becoming more than a shelter. It was becoming a family. Jack started every morning early. He fixed fences, checked water filters, and helped prepare food when the kitchen was short on hands. He had once flown through the stars. But now he spent his time handing out bowls of soup and tying loose shoelaces. Thalia watched it all with calm eyes. She wrote names, updated records, and spoke gently to the newest arrivals. Some cried in her arms. Some just sat beside her in silence. She never rushed them. She gave them time to feel safe. The governor made another visit to inspect the progress. His guards surrounded him as he walked through the yard, stepping carefully over scattered toys and chalk drawings. He expected reports, but instead he found something else. He found peace. This place was a ruin, he said to Jack. Now, it's alive. You've done more here than most officers do in a lifetime. Jack didn't smile. He only nodded and looked toward the playing children. I didn't do it alone, he said. They made this place what it is. Rumors of the orphanage spread beyond the sector. More requests came in. Broken families. Lone survivors, abandoned escape pods, all hoping someone would take them in. Thalia said yes every time. Jack built new rooms faster than anyone thought possible. One evening, as storm clouds rolled across the sky, Thalia gathered the older children inside for a lesson. She taught them numbers and letters, but also how to listen, how to lead, and how to be kind. They were being trained not just to survive, but to guide others. Meanwhile, Jack stood under the storm, helping reinforce the roof. Rain poured down. His back and soaked his boots, but he didn't stop. One of the smallest boys, Malik, came to him holding a spare tool. "Can I help?" he asked. Jack handed him the wrench without a word. Together, they tightened bolts and nailed support beams until the rain stopped. When it was done, Malik looked up and smiled. "You're strong," he said, "like a real superhero." Jack laughed and ruffled the boy's hair. "Real strength is showing up every day," he replied. That night, lightning cracked the sky. Some of the children screamed in their sleep. Jack walked room to room, checking each bed, whispering comfort when needed. Thalia lit small candles and placed them near the windows. Their soft glow pushed back the darkness. The next morning, another transport arrived, but this one didn't carry children. It carried reporters. Word of the orphanage had reached the outer colonies. People wanted to see the man who flew through fire. Cameras clicked. Drones hovered. Jack looked uncomfortable. Thalia stepped forward instead. She spoke to the reporters, explaining how the children were the real story. She spoke of their courage, their healing, and their kindness. She barely mentioned Jack's name. But the children had other plans. They surrounded the cameras, pulling Jack into the center. They told stories of what he had done, how he had carried them, how he had slept on the floor beside their beds, how he had built a swing from scrap metal, and fixed every broken chair in the school. The footage spread quickly. People began calling him the fire pilot. Others called him Guardian Jack, but Jack ignored it. He didn't care about the names. He only cared that more children might be saved if others helped the way he had. Later that week, a cargo ship landed nearby. It brought crates filled with toys, clothes, and books. There was no note, only a message burned into the side of one container, for the home of Jack Merrill. "Keep going." Thalia placed her hand over the message and closed her eyes. That evening, the children danced under the stars. A few played music using makeshift drums and old metal pipes. Jack sat at the edge of the circle with a blanket over his shoulders. One child placed a paper crown on his head and shouted, "Our hero." Jack rolled his eyes, but he didn't take it off. The days passed with laughter and work. More children arrived, and each one was given a bed, a warm meal, and a hug. The orphanage now had 3 buildings, a small farm plot, and a new water system built from old mining parts. Jack helped everywhere he could. If the fence broke, he fixed it. If the solar grid failed, he climbed the tower to check the panels. He never gave long speeches. He only acted. The children followed his example, learning that quiet hands could build strong things. One evening, while repairing a broken pipe near the storage shed, Jack heard a low hum in the sky. He turned his eyes upward. A dark ship, too sleek and fast to be civilian, crossed over the orphanage without slowing down. Its markings were not from their sector. He ran to the control station and powered up the long-range scanner. The system confirmed what he feared. The ship was from a rogue faction known for slave raids and abductions. It had no flight clearance. It hadn't responded to any hails. And now it was circling back. Thalia gathered the children inside quickly. Her voice was calm but sharp. The children didn't panic. They trusted her. They trusted Jack. But deep down, some of them trembled. They had escaped war once. Now war was reaching for them again. Jack called the central outpost, but they had no ships to send. The nearest patrol was 3 hours away. Too late. He stared at the map, then back at the sky. He didn't have weapons. He didn't have shields. But he had a plan. He moved fast. He opened the emergency storage unit and pulled out an old scout drone. It wasn't meant for defense, but it could broadcast a strong signal. He flew it high and let it burst into a false emergency flare. Then he cut power to the orphanage buildings. The sky darkened. From above, the site looked empty, quiet, abandoned. The enemy ship hovered longer than expected. Jack held his breath. As it circled, scanning for heat, movement, or light, the children sat together in silence. Not one of them cried. Then the ship turned away, slowly, as if deciding it wasn't worth the risk. It slipped back into the clouds without firing a shot. Jack stayed in position until the scanner was clear. Only then did he breathe again. The danger had passed for now. Thalia walked outside and stood beside him. "That wasn't luck," she said softly. "That was you." Jack didn't answer right away. He just looked up at the stars. "It'll come back," he said. "Or others like it. We can't keep pretending this place is invisible." The next morning, he called a meeting. The older children, the workers, and Thalia all gathered near the central yard. Jack stood on a crate so everyone could see him. "We need to build more than walls," he said. "We need eyes in the sky. We need early warning. And we need escape routes." A young girl raised her hand. "Are we in danger again?" she asked. Jack looked her in the eye and gave the truth. "Maybe," he said. "But we're not helpless." "Not anymore." That answer was enough. The group nodded. No one argued. Everyone understood. They began building underground storage units, emergency shelters, hidden tunnels that led into the nearby hills. Thalia reached out to old contacts in the capital and requested surveillance gear. This time, she didn't wait for permission. She demanded it. Jack trained the older children on how to signal distress, how to hide quickly, and how to guide the younger ones. It wasn't just practice. It was preparation. They weren't afraid of being attacked again. They were ready to survive it. One night, Malik asked Jack, "Why do people want to hurt us?" "We're just kids." Jack paused before answering. "Some people see weakness where they should see worth. But that's why we build. That's why we protect. So you grow up strong enough to prove them wrong." Thalia listened from the shadows. Her heart was heavy, but proud. These children had lost homes, families, and planets. Yet here they were learning, laughing, preparing. They were stronger than any soldier. They were survivors turned leaders. Asterisk, the new systems worked better than anyone expected. The sensors detected distant energy spikes before they reached visual range. The cameras turned automatically, scanning the skies with silent precision. The orphanage now had a brain as sharp as its heart. Jack stayed busy teaching the children how to respond to alerts. They practiced calmly lining up and hiding. In the tunnels, each child had a partner. The older ones carried maps. Some carried medkits. Even the youngest knew where to go when the signal rang. Thalia updated the registry daily. She now kept records for more than 90 children. Every name mattered. Every voice counted. And every night, she sat with a lantern and made sure none of them had been forgotten. One morning, a large convoy arrived from the central city. Soldiers poured out and lined up in the yard. Behind them came officers in clean uniforms and polished boots. Jack stepped forward, wiping oil from his hands. He didn't salute. He waited for them to speak. The lead officer introduced himself. As Commander Hale, he held a datapad filled with reports. "We've reviewed your work," he said. "This orphanage has grown into a regional beacon, but it's not secure. We've come to move the children to military care." Thalia stepped beside Jack. Her voice was steady but cold. "These children are not cargo," she said. "They have lives here, friends, safety, structure. You're not taking them anywhere." Jack didn't speak. He only stared at Hale and waited. The commander shifted. "You're not qualified to lead this operation," he said. "You're a pilot, not a guardian." Jack stepped forward then. "I was qualified enough to pull them from fire. I was qualified enough to stay when others ran. You weren't here when it mattered." Tension filled the air. Soldiers placed hands on their belts. The children watched from the windows. But just then, a small voice called out. "Don't take us," said Malik. "We're safe here. This is our home." One by one, more voices joined his. The officers hesitated. They had not expected resistance from children. They had not expected unity. Commander Hale looked around and finally lowered his voice. "You'll be inspected monthly. No secrets, no weapons. Just care and survival. If you pass, we step back." Thalia nodded. "We have nothing to hide," she said. "But we won't let fear decide what's best for these lives." Jack didn't smile, but there was a calm pride in his eyes. The convoy stayed an hour longer, then turned and left in silence. That evening, the children danced again. Not because of victory, but because they had chosen to defend something of their own. They painted a new sign beside the garden. It read, "We are not afraid." Jack read it slowly, then helped hang it on the main building. The stars looked brighter. That night, the wind was gentle. Thalia brought out a box of old music chips, and the children took turns choosing songs. Jack didn't dance, but he watched every step, every spin, every burst of laughter. It made the war seem distant. Suddenly the sensors triggered. Lights flashed red. The music stopped. Everyone froze. Jack ran to the control panel. A ship was inbound, fast, too fast, not government, not merchant. He checked the signature. His heart sank. It was the same rogue faction from before. He hit the alarm. Children moved with trained precision, into tunnels, to safe zones. Thalia led the youngest while Jack activated the decoys. Dummy heat packs, empty shuttles, hidden flares. This time, they weren't just hiding. They were defending. The enemy ship hovered just above the fields. A hatch opened, and 5 figures dropped down. Heavily armored, armed, but they weren't expecting resistance. From the shadows, Jack triggered a noise trap. It sent a thunderous burst through the valley. The intruders scattered. One tripped over a camouflaged net. Another was blinded by a flash burst hidden in a tree. Jack moved fast, dodging fire, guiding the enemy away from the shelters. He wasn't fighting to win. He was buying time. Inside the tunnels, Thalia calmed the children. "Stay quiet," she said. "Listen for Jack's signal." She held a small unit, tuned to his frequency. The signal was shaky, full of static, but she kept it close to her chest. Jack led the intruders to the far ridge where the cliffs dropped into deep rock. Then he set off the last beacon. A fake distress pod lit up in the distance. The enemy turned toward it. Jack disappeared into the trees and circled back toward the orphanage. Jack moved through the trees with careful steps. Every branch he avoided, every rock he stepped over, was part of his training. The enemy had split up, confused and frustrated. That gave him the opening he needed to return to the orphanage without being seen. The hidden door to the tunnels was just ahead. Jack gave a soft tap 3 times on the panel. It opened with a soft hiss. Thalia stood there with the youngest child asleep in her arms. Her eyes filled with relief as Jack stepped inside. "They're heading toward the decoy," he said. "But we can't stay here. They'll realize it's a trick soon. We need to move." Thalia didn't argue. She gave instructions calmly, and within minutes, the children were up and moving in perfect formation. The older ones helped the younger. Everyone wore boots and coats. Packs with food, water, and first aid were passed out. Jack carried Malik on his back. The boy was shivering but silent. He trusted Jack completely, and that trust gave Jack strength. They exited through the rear tunnel, which opened into a dry canyon. The path was narrow but safe. It led into a region filled with caves once used by miners. Thalia had mapped them weeks ago. Now those caves were their only hope. Behind them, a distant explosion shook the ground. The enemy had discovered the flare trap. They would return angry, ready to destroy. Jack kept moving without looking back. He had led them out of fire once before. He would do it again. By dawn, they reached the outer caves. The sun was rising, turning the sky gold and orange. The children were tired, hungry, but still together. Jack and Thalia counted every head. Not one was missing. Every single one had made it. Inside the largest cave, they rested. Blankets were unrolled. Food rations were shared. Jack leaned against a wall, his muscles aching. His boots were torn. His hands were scraped. But when he saw the children smiling, he forgot the pain. Thalia sat beside him and handed him a warm drink. "You did it again," she said softly. "You saved them." Jack shook his head. "We saved them, all of us. Even the little ones. They didn't panic. They didn't cry. They moved like a team." Malik came over and placed something in Jack's lap. It was a small paper star, folded from one of the lesson sheets. "You're our light," the boy said. Jack looked at the star for a long time, then tucked it carefully into his coat. Thalia contacted the capital from a portable unit. Her message was brief. "We need help. Immediate evacuation. Children safe. Enemy active." The signal was weak, but she repeated it twice. Then they waited, not knowing if anyone would answer. Hours passed. Jack kept watch at the cave entrance. Every sound made him tighten his grip on the old plasma pistol he carried. It only had 1 charge left. If it came to that, he would make it count. Then just before nightfall, they heard it. The hum of engines, not enemy ships. This sound was familiar, friendly. 4 rescue transports swept in low, kicking up dust. Soldiers in white armor jumped out, scanning for hostiles, then waving toward the cave. Jack waved back. "They're here," he said. The children erupted into cheers. Some ran forward. Others just sat down and cried. The tension broke like a dam. The danger was over, and help had finally come. The soldiers loaded everyone quickly. Jack stayed behind until the last child was inside. Thalia stood at the ramp, her hand stretched out. "You're coming too," she said. Jack hesitated, then climbed aboard. As the doors closed, he looked out one last time. The orphanage was gone, burned, ruined. But its heart had survived. Carried on the backs of children who refused to give up. Carried by a woman who never stopped believing. And carried by one human pilot who always returned when it mattered. Asterisk, the capital city welcomed them with open arms. Fresh clothes, food, and soft beds were waiting. The children stepped off the transports, tired but smiling. Doctors and volunteers helped them settle in. For the first time in weeks, they slept without fear. Thalia met with the governor the next morning. She gave a full report: names, events, coordinates, losses. She left nothing out. But she ended her speech with a simple truth. "We are not broken," she said. "We are alive. And we will rebuild again." The governor agreed. "You have proven what leadership looks like," he said. "And those children are proof of what courage becomes when it is guided by care." He looked toward the landing pads, where Jack was watching the sky in silence. News of the second escape spread across the system. People who had once doubted now believed. Donations poured in. Supplies arrived faster than expected. Even former soldiers came forward, asking if they could help build the next version of the orphanage. Jack did not join the meetings. He spent his time helping unload boxes, fixing faulty lights, and checking flight data. When people tried to thank him, he nodded but said little. He didn't want attention. He wanted progress. Malik stayed by his side most days. The boy followed him with a notebook, drawing the new buildings before they were finished. "This time, we'll make it even better," Malik said. "Stronger walls, bigger kitchen, more windows." Jack smiled without replying. One evening, Thalia approached Jack near the edge of the worksite. "They want to give you a medal," she said. Jack raised an eyebrow. "For doing what was right?" She shook her head. "For saving lives when others hesitated. For returning when others ran." He looked away. "Medals don't matter. What matters is they're still alive." Thalia nodded. "Then let us give them something that does matter. Let's give them a home no one can take. Away again. A place they'll remember with pride." Construction began again. This time, the new orphanage had stronger walls, wider halls, and underground shelters. The roof was lined with stronger solar panels. The floors were made from fireproof compounds. Every detail was built with care and memory. The children helped shape it all. They painted walls with bright colors. They planted trees around the perimeter. Each classroom had a star symbol above the door, just like the one Malik had made. Jack hung the original star near the entrance. On the day of the reopening, hundreds of people came. Soldiers, officials, workers, journalists. But the loudest voices were the children's. They ran across the new yard, chasing each other, laughing. Louder than the crowd, a large banner hung across the gate. It read, "Welcome to Jack Merrill Home for the Lost and Found." Jack stood quietly under it. He didn't speak. He didn't wave. But the look in his eyes was all anyone needed to see. Malik pulled him toward the front. "Say something," the boy whispered. "Everyone's listening." Jack stepped up onto the platform. His voice wasn't loud, but it was clear. "I didn't do this alone," he said. "This place was built by every hand that refused to give up." He paused. "We lost much, but we gained something stronger, a promise that no child would be left behind again. That when fire comes, we stand together. That when darkness falls, we light the way for each other." The crowd applauded. Some wiped tears. Others stood in silence, touched by the words. Jack stepped down and let the celebration begin. Music filled the air. Food was passed around. Children danced barefoot on the soft new grass. Thalia stood at the back of the crowd, her arms crossed. She smiled as she watched them, her people, her mission. Her children. She knew they were no longer orphans. They were part of something that would never break again. As night fell, the stars above seemed brighter. Jack sat by the garden with Malik beside him. The boy leaned his head on Jack's arm. "We're safe now," Malik said. Jack looked at the sky and gave a quiet answer. "Yes," he said. "You're safe. And you're home."